Hello everyone, welcome back to another part of our farming RPG. This is part 4 of our tutorial series. So far we've set up the basic farmland where we can handle the 3 states. The player can select each plot and change its state. But now we need to get to the items because in any farming RPG there's going to be a lot of items that you have to manage, like the crops, the seeds, the tools, and all that. We could always use a mono behavior class to do that, but you see, it's going to be resource intensive as the list piles on. Mono behavior classes are bound to the scene, so the data won't be persistent. So a way out of this that we can use is a scriptable object. So to do this, let's first go to our scripts. Let's create a new folder, call this inventory, and then create a new C# script, call it ItemData. Open it up. We're not going to be using mono behavior, but scriptable object. Scriptable objects are bound to the project instead of the scene. So that way the data is persistent and it's going to be less resource intensive because it's just going to be in one place, whereas mono behavior based objects will have to be instantiated. So for scriptable objects to be accessible in the project, we just have to create asset menu and set the menu name to how we want it to be found. So in this case, we want it to be item. So now if we were to go to assets, let's create a new folder to store all our scriptable objects. Create a folder, call this data. So this is store all scriptable objects. So the scriptable objects that we want to store would be our tools and items, right? We'll be splitting our items into these two categories. So let's create a folder for each of them, tools and items. Now, as mentioned before, we set our menu name to item. So if we want to create a new scriptable object, we just have to right click, create item. So for example, I want to call this cabbage, and then we have a cabbage entry. So now we can determine the properties of each entry by declaring variables, as we would do in a mono behavior class. So for items, what I wanted to record would be its description, as well as its icon, so its thumbnail, and finally its game to be shown in the scene. Let's call this game model. And now we can see these variables. So the cabbage would be a leafy green vegetable. Now for tools, we want things to have a bit more than just these properties, but we also want these properties as well. So what we can do is go back to our scripts folder. Let's create a new C# script. Call this equipment data. Since we want all the properties from item data, what we can do is that we inherit from item data. Now, what we want our equipment to have is an enum. Full watering can, X, pickaxe. And then, now that we have declared our enum, variable tool type. So now that we have a subset of item, we can't make it item anymore. So let's call this item. And we'll create another asset menu in here. It's a subcategory of items. It's going to be called equipment. So now in our menu, when you go to create, instead of one thing, you now see that there are two options. So now we can create a equipment, make a hole, can create a scriptable object for each item. All right, now let's go find some sprites. So we download the assets that we want to use. Go over to imported assets, UI, and import them. After we've imported them, change its texture type to sprite, apply, change the sprite mode to multiple. Now if you were to click the sprite editor, it says no sprite editor window registered. Please download 2D sprite package from package manager. So to fix this, let's go to window, package manager, go to all packages, 2D sprite. There we go. Select 2D sprite, click install. After installing the sprite editor's 2D sprite package, you can now open sprite editor. Go to slice, automatic, pivot center, click slice, and click apply. And now you have each individual sprite sliced up. Do the same with farm tools, sprite mode multiple, sprite editor, slice, automatic. Now you have each individual sprite sliced, hit apply. Let's go back to our data area, data folder. In each of the scriptable objects, let's assign a sprite to it. So for the axe, get this. Pickaxe. Don't have a watering can. Just set the watering can to this for now. Let's create some, set the cabbage to cabbage. There we go. Now in our tools, apart from equipment, we also want seeds, which the player can scatter to grow into crops. But this needs additional properties from our items. So same thing again, go to inventory, the inventory folder in our scripts folder. Create another C# script. Let's call this SeedData. Inherit from ItemData. Remove these functions. Now we need the following properties. Days to grow. Each crop is going to take different timings for them to grow. So we're going to measure them in days. We have to set what it's going to yield. And last but not least, create asset menu name, items, seed. So now we have a new option. Let's go back to our data folder in our tools folder. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it seed. Create a new scriptable object, seed. Call this cabbage seeds. Seeds to grow cabbage. So we set the thumbnail to this. Game model, we'll do that later. So it's going to take about 3 days to grow, and it's going to yield a cabbage once it's mature. So when the player harvests the crop, it's going to be a cabbage. And that's it for our data management. Now let's get to our UI. So first, we'll create a game object in the scene. We'll call it manager. So this game object is going to manage all the global aspects of the game in the scene. So we need something to handle the inventory, to keep track of what the player has. So let's create a new script. We'll call it InventoryManager. There's going to be one instance of it at any time, so we don't want it to have like 2 or 3 inventory managers. So to prevent this, let's declare an instance. I'm going to set it in the await function. This sets up our singleton class. So now we need to keep track of all our item data. As mentioned before, there's going to be 2 sets in our inventory, the tools and the items. So we'll create an array for each of them. There's going to be 8 slots and 1 hand. So eight slots. And in each set, there's going to be 1 hand to equip for the player. So okay, now that we have this, we can add our inventory manager here. So this will manage whatever's in our player's hand, like that. To tidy things up, let's header. Okay, that's it for our inventory manager. Now we need a way to represent this on the screen. So let's set up a UI canvas. So right click, create a new UI canvas. 2D, so we can see it in all its glory. Now it's going to render, it's going to scale with our screen size according to what our aspect ratio. So it's 16 to 9. So 1600 by 900. It's going to be our reference resolution. And we want it to look like this. So let's make a new game object, an empty one. We'll just call this inventory. So it's gonna toggle, it's gonna open and close as we want it. So if our player opens it, it opens. If it closes, it closes. And we'll create a button for the player to open it. It's gonna be at the bottom right. Set the sprite back. So if the player clicks on this, it's going to open the inventory. Now back to our inventory panel. It's going to be divided into two. So let's start with the tools panel. Tools. So what I like to do is I'm going to anchor it to the top left, hold shift, click it like this. It's going to, so we're going to occupy the whole screen and then drag it like this. It's going to be half, takes up half the screen. I'm going to move it like that. So top is 0, bottom is maybe about 250 pixels. Yep, that's about right. Its color is going to be this. And on the top right, let's call this tools. It's going to have text. Top right. $70 by 20. Maybe a little bigger. Align this to this. Like that. Now we're going to create this. So this is going to be our hand slot. It's going to take up the anchor to the top left. Let's position it about 150 pixels. Around there. This background is going to be its color. You can set it to whatever you like, but this is the color scheme that I've chosen to go with. Slot is going to have this thing. So it has a little rounded edge. The source image is input field UI sprite. There we go. And then I'm going to create an empty theme object. This will be its inventory slots. And I'm going to anchor this to the bottom. Yep. I'm going to add a grid layout group. So it's going to standardize the images that it's going to. So there's going to be 8 slots, and I'm going to organize them with this grid layout group. So set the spacing until we like it. It's going to be aligned on the center. Like that. just nice. The thing about our inventory slot, it's going to be more complex than just an image. So what I would like to do is make it a prefab. Call this an inventory slot. Create a new folder. In the prefabs folder, by the way. Drag this. Whoops. Drag this inventory slot over. So this is going to be the background, but on it there's going to be another image. It's going to be the item display. So for example, if we're in the tools and there's like a hole, it's going to look like this. Now we're going to add a bit of padding. Oops. Going to maximize it like that. Mode alternate, click this. It's maxed out here. And you can set the padding 10 by 10 by 10. And we'll set this to apply. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now it looks exactly as we want it. Now let's duplicate it. There we go. So we change the header again, change it to item spanner. Change the header from tools to items, like that. Now we're almost done. At the bottom, it's going to show the item name and item description. So we'll create one more image, anchor it to the bottom, stretch its position to its max, and just expand it like that. The inventory button shouldn't be in the way, so we'll just change the layering, get it front, so the button is always behind. So now back to this. Select, change the color to this. Maybe we'll add a little padding too. I think it's fine. So this is the item information. This will display the item name. Should be about 48. Item name 36 would work. And now on the bottom, it's going to this is going to be the item description. This is the item description. It's gonna be slightly smaller like that. There. Now we're all set up. So we need a way to open and close this inventory panel. And we can do that via script. But the easiest way, the most lazy way, is to, on the button, just set the on click to this. Select it. And we duplicate this button, put it in the panel. And on it, we can set active to false. And now if you were to play test, it's going to, when we press the bag, it's going to open. Click return, it's going to close. There. It's just as we want it. Now the next issue is to render our inventory to accurately reflect what is in there. So first, now that we have an inventory manager, we need a UI manager to manage all the UI for us. So let's create a UI manager. It's going to be a singleton class as well, because there's only going to be one instance of it. So we can just copy this whole function from inventory manager and put it on UI manager. Like this. Object static instance. Private. Now, normally we would be able to display whatever's on here with just the image. And then we can just handle everything on this class. But we want to be able to do more complex things, like move the slots around. So how do we do this? First off, let's organize our scripts folder. Create new folder. And remove all UI related scripts. So inventory manager goes into inventory, UI manager. So we'll create a new asset. Let's call this inventory slot. We'll be attaching this to the prefab. Like this. So in each inventory slot, we're going to keep track of our item data, item to display, and we'll create a function. which will change whatever this is. Now we need a Unity engine.ui. So we need an image variable for display. So in displaying it, we want to get the sprite from the item data. So if item to display is not null, check if there is an item to display. So if it is not null, we set our local item. This item to display equals item to display. But if it's null, it's going to why this is that even if there is no sprite, for example this, if there's no sprite, it's going to be an ugly white, which is not what we want. So we have to set the game object to false for this. We can control this en masse. So let's go to our UI manager using Unity engine UI. We'll get all the inventory slots for this. This is going to be our inventory system. It's going to be an array of each of these 2 slots. Same thing for item slots. Yeah, I don't think we need any of these. So we'll create a function to accurately reflect the player's inventory. So going to take the InventoryManager.instance. This is our item data. 2 slots. So we'll iterate through each one. We'll get the 2 slots to correspond to this index. Oops. We'll do the same for items, so I think it's better to make it a function to do it twice. And we'll take this. So instead of this, we'll do since we'll be rendering both the tools and item section, we need this to be more general. So this function should take in an additional parameter, UI slots. In this function, replace tool slots with UI slots. Do the same for the items. Inventory slots. Now render the item section. Render inventory panel. Slots. Now this should work. Actually, let's bring back the start. We'll render inventory. See if it works. But first, we need to set them up. So our tool slots are from let's lock this. Tool slots, bring them here. And our items panel slots come from here. There. So now oh, forgot to do this. So go to our inventory slot prefab. Set the item display image to item display. There. That should work. There. Since our player has nothing, it renders nothing. If our player should, but we have to make it so that every time the player opens the inventory slot, it renders. So we can't do the rendering the lazy way anymore. So this, we have to set up a function to toggle the inventory. So this way it'll be easier to. We can also open the inventory from the keyboard. So let's reference game object inventory panel. This inventory panel refers to this. So now if inventory panel dot active cell, wait, there's an easier way to do this. Let's there. So it will do the opposite of whatever its current active state is. And now we just have to run the inventory panel. Oops, render inventory. So we change the button from this to InventoryManager UI Manager dot toggle inventory panel. Copy this, put this on our exit button as well. There. So theoretically it should be doing the same thing, but now if we were to add something to the player's inventory, let's say he has a, let's say the player has an axe and a hoe and a pickaxe, a watering can, and he has cabbage and cabbage seeds here. Now it will show. Okay, we've gotten that part sorted out. Now we need to display our items. So go to your inventory slot script. I pointer enter handler. So this needs Unity event systems, and we have to implement our interface like that. Event data. So when the pointer is entered, we have to display the item here. So what we can do is create a function in UI Manager. Box. So the item info box will show whatever's on there. Text. Item description. And we make a new function to display item info box. So we pass over the data. It should be it. We just need to set this accordingly. So the item info is the name and the description. Oops, I forgot to rename this. Item, it's there. And every time they so now on pointer enter, it's gonna pass the reference over and go this. And on exit, we want it to be to reset. Then we just set this to null. And in UI Manager, display item info, we'll just add an if statement to handle the now value. Forgot to return. So let's give the player some starting items. There. Let's add some descriptions. Okay. Now they come together nicely. Alright, that's it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time.